within the university for staff members. And, that was our number one question, was like, oh my gosh, are we going to all get targeted? Are we going to lose our jobs? Is this committee going to have to be dissolved? And we're simply taking on initiatives such as creating lactation spaces in rooms across campus, documenting which bathrooms are accessible to who. I think people have the wrong idea of what DEI is and what it stands for, and that's the work that we're doing is still diversity, equity, inclusion, because it's making sure that our university is equitable to all of its members, no matter who they are. But people have this misconception that it is some dangerous, scary thing. That's a boogeyman that's going to come get your children as they go to college, who are adults now. That we're supposed to trust at the ripe age of 18. So I think it's crazy to hear that the governor is willing to target some of the most substantial institutions in the state that at least contribute wonderful things and research to our state and its economy.
So I have a question for Mr. Crawford, for Anthony. I'm gonna get used to that, just saying Anthony in this space. So how are you fostering the younger minds in this conversation? Because I know that you work with some younger ages, and how are you empowering them to not get lost in this conversation where they might feel like they could end up in a space where they're not recognized or seen or acknowledged to their fullest potential because there isn't anything in place like this?
Before I speak, I want to take what Justin said, because I too am only speaking on my opinion, my heart, my thought. I said, I don't know who in here, and to answer your question though, a lot of my students, they kind of already seen this coming, mainly because I do work at a predominantly Black school, and I do have predominantly Black students in and out of my classroom all day. We research things that's going on in the communities. We research things that's going on in current events. We research past events. We research the truth. And a lot of these things lead back to, similar sources of what's going on in today's society. One being them removing or trying to remove, DEI out of higher institutions, but they also attacking us on a PK to 12 level, because I know you heard of the HB 1775. Them saying that we can no longer teach certain things about Black history in school anymore, which the Black Emergency Response Team is fighting on behalf of that right now. So like I said, my students, they already kind of knew, because this already happened in Florida. So they kind of seen like, hey, Crawford, this about to come to Oklahoma. And I'm just like, hey, if it do, then make sure that you are still researching, you still are learning your own history. You still, you're not relying on a higher institution, or you're not relying on anyone to teach you about who you are. So, it's all about preparation on the level that I teach on.
That's a great point. That is all about the preparation and the mindset that you're giving to these students. And so I guess that gives us a little bit more of a segue into what does this look like after people graduate? I think one of the big points that I was taking away from this and was that part of the executive order was removing the mandatory training of state agencies for DEI. And what that looks like is everybody, it doesn't have the exposure to diverse communities or what it looks like to have an equitable field or to be included in the conversation. And now when you're supposed to be learning about these things in higher education institutions, it's not happening, right? So if we're not having this conversation there, if we're not expanding their mind there, if we're not exposing them to the world there beyond the mindset that they have when they're at home, which could be very small compared to what's out there beyond, what exactly should we be doing in preparing them to get to corporate America? I mean, how can we say we've prepared this individual to actually advance your business, your corporation, beyond what has just been given to them?
I'll take on that question first if Regina and Justin don't mind.
Jump in, bro.
But that kind of gives us a mirror in the sense that we have to start looking at ourselves. You know, it like you said, everything does start at home, but the world has so much more information. The world has so much more. So if we're not seeking these things, if you know, people who went on and got their doctorates, their masters, their bachelors doesn't come back to share their resources, if this is in a reflection of our dependency on this system, our dependency on this nation, then we in trouble. You know, because that lets me know that we're still dependent on other spaces. We're still dependent on certain institutions for our validation, for our excellence. You know, when it should come from within. And like I said, it gives us a mirror to look at what we've been doing. And, you know, within our own these past decades. You know, as far as because you know DEI is kind of, I'm not saying that it's fairly new, but it's still you know hasn't ran a longer course. It hasn't ran a long course yet. So you know, with that being said, it's like it gives us the way to look at ourselves and what we need to work on as well.
And I'll just piggyback on that. More and more, we are seeing the workforce become more global. It's becoming smaller. And so when you think about the work that goes on around the world, you need to be able to interact with different cultures, people. And I think sometimes DEI gets minimized into just being a race based issue, and it's much more than that. Um, DEI is absolutely for women in the workplace, um, being able to bring your whole self to the workplace. When we talk about sexual harassment and workplace discrimination, when we talk about employment opportunities, training, development, all of these things really help us to become the best and the brightest. And so we know that systemically, there have been barriers not only in education, but also in the workplace. And now we are putting those barriers back in place where we were really just starting to tear them down. Not to say that it was wide open anyway, even though it's 2023 getting ready to be 2024. And yet and still people are still facing some of these challenges in the workplace. And so what's happening is our students are not being prepared. They're not learning. Um, they don't have the skills that they need to really be effective successfully in the workplace. And those that are and have gained those skills over time, they leave the state. Corporations, organizations who understand and get the bigger picture don't want to come here. And so more and more we are isolating ourselves when we should be opening the doors to learn and grow and be not only a better state, but a better nation, raise better kids who are prepared to go out and be global citizens in the world. And that's the unfortunate part about this decision. That's the message that it's sending. But what I love is that corporations and organizations that I've spoken to since this executive order are saying, no, DEI is important. We're going to continue to do the work. And even though that is the governor's decision for our state schools, it is still a mandate for us. So whereas, some people may feel like, oh, I didn't learn it. We didn't learn that in school. You will still be on the hook. Your employer or potential employer is still going to want to know that you have these skills. And if you don't, you will be at a disadvantage.
Go for it.
piggyback off what Regina said, Miss Sister Regina, I'm sorry, and to bring it back full circle, she spoke about those barriers, and not to speak on majority of those barriers, but some of those barriers were actually created by, and I'm kind of just speaking on, the Black community, but most of those barriers is actually invented by us, because after integration, our top and wealthiest, left their own communities. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said we need to pull up that mirror and those individuals, who have the money, who have the resources, who have the education, who have, the things that we need in order for us to thrive as a community, to go back to those communities and pour into them. Because obviously with this being done, this we at war right this, and this not only affects only the Black community, it affects a lot of others. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, to bring it back full circle, it's just we need to look at ourselves and figure out what we can do as a people.
Well, Anthony, you're absolutely right. And, one of the number one things that I hear, sadly, from students in Stillwater is when I'm done with my degree, I'm leaving. I'm leaving Stillwater. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to wherever it is that I feel like, one, I feel most welcome. And of course, there's always the pay question too, in terms of what's my work worth, right? And as housing continues to skyrocket, and legislation continues to get passed to make life harder just in general for Oklahomans, more and more people are going to continue to either turn around and leave, or they're never going to come here. Our hope is to grow, and we've seen success at OSU in growth of new students. The one issue though is we're going to see a plateau here soon, and when an enrollment curve hits, right, we're going to see a dip. We know that that's coming, right? The problem with executive orders and legislation that target individuals is that dip is going to be way bigger than what would normally just happen on its own. We're going to see a decrease in individuals coming to school in Oklahoma or seeking a higher education if they're already in Oklahoma. Because I know for at least me, coming from southeastern Oklahoma, middle of freaking nowhere, going to college was an escape for me, right? As
Mhm.
a gay man, I was not accepted in the town that I came from, the location of Oklahoma that I came from. I was excited to come to college because I was able to be myself, and I can't imagine what if I was going into college this next semester, what I'd be thinking right now. I would be terrified. I would be so worried that I'm not going to be able to be myself still, even though I'm an adult, even though I'm going to college to get this degree to enhance my life, but become more knowledgeable as a world citizen. And I can only imagine that upcoming students are terrified, and people who want to come here to work are not going to come here because it terrifies them as well. Their families are being put on the line, and their livelihoods are being put on the line as well. And it's hard to go to sleep at night when you're worried about losing your job one day, or being harassed by somebody, or just simply for being who you are. And this type of legislation and these types of orders, they just permeate and make it easier for other people to attack those who are different from themselves.
And you know what, Justin, we already have a really good example in the education industry, right? Teachers have been under fire. What you can teach in the classroom, what you can't teach, wearing masks, not wearing masks, not paying teachers. And now what? You've got entire education departments that are shutting down because there is not an influx of students to feed into the department. We keep acting like our words don't matter and our actions don't matter, and as if they don't have consequences. Our state, our students, our teachers, um, they need education in the state. We need great teachers. And if we can't teach them here, then they will go elsewhere. So we're already seeing that dry up. And so now the question becomes global citizens who are aware, who understand the big picture, who understand what it means to bring commerce to the state. And If you continue to talk and set up policies to push people out, that is exactly what will happen. And it's unfortunate because I'm a fifth generation Oklahoman. I love being from Oklahoma. This is my home. When I tell you, born and raised in the Greenwood district, the same house from birth to the time I left for college, walking on holy ground every day. We understood what it meant to be from Tulsa. We understood what it meant to be surrounded by indigenous people and communities. We understood what it meant, the soil and the land of Oklahoma. We understood what it meant to be in Oklahoma, and it was something to be proud of. Not that we have always, been at the top of the pinnacle in terms of states and what we bring to the table, but I have always been very proud to be an Oklahoman. And so it's very unfortunate to see the leadership in the state at this time making decisions that really continually put us at the top of the wrong list and the bottom of the right list. So why is it that, violence against women, imprisoned women, why are we at the top of that list? Why is this the worst state for a woman to live in? At the end of the day, those are DEI issues. And what could be done if we had a health equity director for the state focusing on healthcare? All of these things matter. So when you continually push these things out in a way, you get what you set up. You built this house and you have to live in it.
That's the truth. You get what you put your money to. And so I think that that's something we must pay attention to, is where our dollars go. And that tells you what the priorities are for our state and for those people that are elected to these offices. We do have a question, and I think this one is going to be taken by Justin and I, most definitely, because it's Democratic Party related. And if you two want to jump in and you feel like you have something to add to it, please feel free. But I do. The question is, how will the Democratic Party engage and inspire young voters from diverse backgrounds this year? So, of course, 2024 is a presidential election year, but it is a massive year for Oklahomans and what we have on the ballot, and it always is, and it always brings about a lot of engagement. It usually is our best year, and that's saying a lot because we still haven't reached 50% of voter engagement. That's another conversation for another panel. But I do want to say that this is one of the things that I wanted to do as the president of Young Democrats of Oklahoma, was to have panels like these, to have conversations that are outside of just what it takes to be a voter, but what are the things that we can do to actually get people involved, to see that who you elect is what actually drives issues like this. If we had a different governor in place, we might not have an executive order that looks like this. And I can't say what that governor would be doing at this moment, but I would think that if we elected someone that didn't go down this path and didn't sign a HB 1775 to start us off with, and then carry us further down the road to where we are now talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion overall, then we would be doing better. So it's our job as young people to have conversations like this to show the importance of why we should vote, but also we want to build community around conversations like this, because this is where it starts. Elections impact everything from the water you drink to you turning on the lights in your homes to, everything that you do is impacted by an election. And so I hope that we can continue to show that it is important, but also knowing that it's a struggle for some people to be involved to the level that I am, or even just to pay attention just a little bit, because we do have those moments where we need to take care of ourselves and our families and the folks around us, because we do have a lot of issues that are taking place. Unhoused people, we have folks that are working multiple jobs in school. I mean, there's various people out there that we have to interact with, and Young Democrats of Oklahoma goes from ages 14 to 40. So you can imagine what's happening between that age range and what issues they may be dealing with in their everyday lives. So say all that to say we will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that we are engaging people about this issue. And so, Justin, I do want to throw you in there because you can speak to more of that rural Oklahoma concept and what it is that we've been doing to engage them.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. It, I am happy to see that younger generations, my generation, millennials are, some of the most progressive groups of people to ever walk the face of the planet, right? We want change and we want it now. Um, but in that sense, I think that is almost a detriment, right? A lot of young people, especially in Oklahoma, are discouraged, right, to vote, to be active, to be civically engaged, because they feel like nothing that they're going to say or do or vote for is ever going to make a difference. We feel like we're kind of stuck in this rut of the other side making our lives worse and worse and worse. And it is. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not exactly what's happening. They're absolutely right. It is discouraging to see that the people in charge are basically telling multiple populations of the state and the country that they don't care about them. They don't care what happens to them. They don't care what is going to happen to them. And we've seen through legislation and through executive orders that that has always been the case with this governor and with the current leadership in the House of Representatives and mostly in the Senate. And I think a lot of young people just don't know what to do, right? And yes, you're absolutely right. Voting is number one, the way we're going to make a difference, right? That is the way that America was created, was for every citizen to have the ability to vote and make that decision. The problem is when the minority is the only group of people that are registered to vote, they are going to make all of the decisions, right? I think I hear from a lot of young people as the advisor for the young Democrat, or the College Democrats of OSU. I hear a lot of conversations simply around the Democratic Party overall, right? A lot of students feel like the Democratic Party does not stand in the same way with the same values that they do. And I'm glad to have such a wonderful Young Democrats of Oklahoma president leadership team, because I think you guys exemplify that, right? But a lot of times these students are, you're exactly right, so inundated with their day-to-day lives that they only see the headlines. They only see the big things. They only hear about what they see on Facebook, what their friends shared on Instagram or whatever, right? And so it's a hard conversation to have with students and say, listen, unfortunately, when you go to a restaurant, you can't afford everything on the menu, right? However, if you if you like one specific thing, you need to show up and order that thing or it's going to get taken off the menu, right? I think a lot of younger people, they don't always show up to things like this. They don't show up to, say, let's county conventions, for instance, where your county elections or your county Democratic officers are elected, or even state conventions where your state officers are elected. And a lot of people, unfortunately, have many different little tangents that they want to go down in terms of what they care about. And that's great. I'm glad that everybody is so empowered to speak on and push for change in their area. The issue is when you don't show up to those decision-making days, that issue is not going to be on the table. And unfortunately, it's not necessarily anyone's fault that the focus is not going to be on that specific thing when you didn't show up in the first place. So I think, and I say all of that not to be discouraging, I just say that to be realistic, right? If we don't actually show up, if we don't vote, if we don't make our voice heard in any of the ways, not even just voting, just being civically engaged, volunteering, being seen in our communities, we are not going to make the impact that we want. And we are still going to be unhappy, and our lives are going to continue to be inundated with this for the lack of a better term, crap that we see coming from higher ups in the state. So I hope that our younger generations can see just how important voting really is, and they don't get discouraged by all of the rhetoric and the partisanship and the vitriol that comes out of things like elections, and partisan, squabbles. Because at the end of the day, we are all Democrats, right? And we all do stand for the same basic principles. And I hope that young people can at least understand that, and not necessarily have to vote for a Democrat. You can vote for whoever you would like, but I would hope that we can have at least a conversation, understand why our candidates and the people who represent you in the party and you in the Democratic side of the House of Representatives and the Senate really do care about you and your well-being.
I just want to piggyback on that very quickly and make a point, and that is when Governor Stitt was first elected, and clearly he was the choice of the majority, correct? But there were more people that were registered to vote that did not vote that would have completely blown it. Either way, if they would have voted Republican or Democrat, would have completely blown either party out the water. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people who were registered to vote that did not vote. And had everyone who was voted engaged, who knows how that first election would have gone, the gubernatorial race before this last one. Who knows? It could have been Drew Edmondson. It could have still been Stitt. But if everyone that was registered would have voted, I have a feeling that things would have gone very differently.
That's a point. And we do have to also note that, and I say this at every speaking engagement that I have now, that Gen Z in 10 years will have taken over the voting population. They will be the largest voting population in the country, in the state. And so if we could register every Gen Z person that can vote to be a part of the process, to be there and actually cast a ballot, they can alone shift the dynamics of what it will look like here in the state of Oklahoma and in this country. That is amazing to me. They will be the next set of baby boomers that will just essentially have control over the election block. And so that's a huge thing. We did have another question that came up, and I wanted to get to this one. So I did make a couple of posts about DEI being a buzzword. It has been created, like turned into this full-on trend to talk about DEI, and they use it as if it's like a cliff note that they just got to put it to the side just to make sure that it gets the attention, but it actually is in place for a reason. So how do we prevent DEI from being just a trend and actually be relevant and keep it relevant in our society?
Y'all want me to go first? Y'all looking at me?
Go ahead.
No, I think you got to live it. And honestly, corporate America is not going to let us not live it, because you're not going to be able to keep a job. These initiatives are in place, and I think people are on their own journey, right? I think sometimes what turns people off from DEI is that they expect you to see the world their way and do it my way. And it's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. It's not about making you into me, or me trying to be like you. And I think sometimes that's what's the turn off. DEI is for everyone. It is really about removing all of the barriers and making sure that everyone has a path with no inaccessibility. Like, we can move forward. I can build the life that I want. I can go to the school that I want. If I meet the merit standard, I can go to work at a location and bring my best self to work and be able to be engaged in that workplace at a high level and be welcome. I mean, beautiful things are born when people are able to collaborate and bring their whole self to work. It affects the bottom line. I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to corporations, they see the bottom line. They see the dollar signs, because employee engagement and really what is at the employee engagement is the one thing that can be measured that affects the bottom line. There are 3 drivers of employee engagement: psychological safety, psychological awareness, and psychological availability. Those can be measured. And so when you have those 3 green lights at work, you are doing your best work. You are in the flow. You are really making things happen. And organizations like that. And so I think as much as people want to act like or talk like it's just a trend and this will blow over, it is not. Because at the end of the day, we're still a capitalist nation that likes to make money. And at the end of that is knowing that when you have engaged employees, which means I have to learn about you. I have to get to know you. I have to get to know myself as a if I'm a man at work, I need to understand. I manage women. I need to understand that. If I'm a woman and I manage men, I need to understand. I need to be able to speak their language. I need to be versatile. It's a globalized, it's becoming more rare that companies are able or organizations are able to operate in silos. We're all connected. And we're going to continue to connect. And those that do not want to connect will continue to be isolated. So it's whether you accept it as a trend or the new way, it is what it is. And honestly, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it DEI, you can call it equity, you can call it inclusion, you can call it affirmative action, you can call it EEO. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Racism.
You said what?
You can call it racism.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want to call it. The initiatives and the work will continue to be done.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that 2 things. You just touched on the fact that, yes, the United States is a capitalistic society, right? And I think we've seen recently, especially I've seen in the news and in the headlines, that, Gen Z is showing in big ways what they think of certain corporations due to their choices right now, right? No matter where you stand on the debate that's going on between companies giving monies to, foreign nations, the facts are there that Gen Z and those who are of the younger generations are making a huge bottom line impact on these companies by simply not going and getting a coffee every day, not going and eating at a certain restaurant every day. And what I have to say about that is, why can't we have that same energy about voting, right? Why can't we have that same energy about voting? In fact, it's free. It's free to vote. You don't have to pay for anything to vote, right? And so in that sense, I think, we've already seen the impact, Jakia, of this generation making decisions. And I think in the corporate world, there's a lot of social pressure to be a good workplace and have those 3 green lights like you're talking about, Regina, because this generation of workers, my generation of workers, we want to feel welcome and we want to feel valued in the workplace. I think past generations have been okay with simply having to just show up every day 8 to 5, doing their work, checking out and be done. But to us, work is a passion, right? And I would hope that everyone gets to work. I hope that everyone gets to work in an industry that they're passionate about. But even if you don't, you should still not wake up every morning dreading going to work, right? Simply because you don't feel welcome, right? Like for instance, I'm one of our innovators for our department wellness program, and just today we had sorry, not our director, we're not a company. We had our department Christmas party, and we announced that we're opening a wellness room in our department. And it's been a really interesting conversation of it went from being a walking treadmill workstation room to being this entire mental, physical, emotional well-being space for people. And I think that that's something that our generation really values, right? And you're absolutely right, where DEI can take on any name, right? Because us creating a wellness room for people's emotional well-being, for people's maybe people have a certain disability or something where they need a space away from other people. Let's say somebody has diabetes and needs to take insulin. Going into the bathroom and taking insulin, I wouldn't want to go get a flu shot in a public restroom, right? So I for sure wouldn't want to give myself an insulin shot in the restroom. So it's nice to have a space that's quiet, calm, cool, that you're able to concentrate and you're able to safely and securely give yourself your insulin. And that's just one of the small, small aspects of what DEI actually is. It's people's livelihoods. It's people just being able to, like you say, show up as their full selves, and I can say I wouldn't want to go to work at a place that doesn't value DEI, that doesn't value whatever you want to call it, but doesn't value us as people, I think is the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question that came in from Kirsten. I appreciate you engaging with us. And she said, as a dedicated voter in my school district, city, ward, county, and state elections, what steps can I take as a white female to actively support diversity, equity, and inclusion, even if it is under attack by our current leaders? That's a great question. I think one thing that I want to say is, Kirsten, that DEI, I know that a lot of times, and what has been highlighted by elected officials currently is that DEI is specific to only ethnicity, but it does go past that. I think we've noted that a few times in this panel conversation, is that is a part of it, because we cannot erase what people see. So people are going to immediately react to what they see first. So that being your ethnicity, but also your gender. So that is going to be the first thing that they initially attach to. But after that, there are so many other things that DEI takes care of. And so I'm sure that within that space, you are impacted as well within DEI. So I'm going to turn it over to the panelists, the people that know about it, to tell us exactly how you can be impactful in this as well.
I'll be real quick, because I think sometimes it can get a little complicated when it could really be very simple. So for Kirsten, if you want to know what you can do to, make an impact in DEI, let me make sure I'm reading your take. Actively support. Break bread with somebody who does not look like you. And Kirsten, take a really good look at your circle, your friends, the people you spend time with, the people you go to work with, the people you may worship with. If everybody looks like you, and I'm not just talking race, right? Do you have any disabled people in your life? Any elderly people in your life? Do you have any young people in your life? Who are you spending your time with? And I guarantee you, when you begin to actually break bread with people who don't look like you and don't have the same background as you really get a window into other people's worlds, and you start to see the world from their eyes, and that changes you. And once you can be changed, you can take that into your workplace. You can take that into your family. When everyone's gathering around the table for Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, families are coming together during this holiday season. And some of the most closed-minded, narrow-minded people are our family members. Think about the impact you could have at home or with a friend, just based off of getting to know someone for real that doesn't look like you.
No, I love that. And I want to, on the sense of your circle. So when I was a student at OSU my freshman year, and then afterwards as a orientation leader, um, one of the activities that we did that we no longer could do within, let me think, I think it was my senior year, my last year being a counselor, we were told we were no longer able to do the activity because it made someone feel uncomfortable, which in my head, being uncomfy means you're growing. You don't learn in a comfortable setting, you learn when you're uncomfortable. But we used to do this activity where there would be all these different colored M&Ms on a table, right? And someone, whoever was facilitating the discussion, would read out um, basically a statement saying, I identify as, or I identify with, and it would be blank. I identify as an LGBTQ person. Okay. You would put a little colored M&M in your cup. Okay. And then you would be asked to think about your friends and your family and answer those same questions. I am surrounded by blank, right? Whoever you're surrounded by, you would put a color in your cup. Let's say, for instance, if all of your friends you notice are white, you would put an orange M&M in your cup. And those identities all had a corresponding color that by the end, when you looked in your cup, you could tell, okay, do I have all orange M&Ms in this cup? And I need to go and I need to make some friends and find some people who are not an orange M&M,
Mhm.
who are different than me in some capacity, so I
Mhm.
can understand what they're going through. And I thought, it's a very simplistic way to explain, what you're saying, Regina. And I think it's absolutely true. I think, becoming educated and putting yourselves in other people's shoes really goes a long way.
It really
Simply
does.
asking somebody, "Hey, what does such and such mean?" Or tell me about yourself, or tell me about your religion, or tell me about the thing you believe, or tell me
Mhm.
any of that stuff. And honestly, it's very fascinating, right? I mean, I have had some of the most wonderful conversations with people who are absolutely nothing like me, even who are politically on the opposite side of me, but
Mhm.
yet, because politics is a part of our identities, but it's not the most important part of our identities, right? And right now, we let that be the driving force on who we're friends with and not friends with. But we need to see that people are more than just politics. People are more than just race and ethnicity. People are more than just their disabilities. People are more than we are all human beings, and we all have thoughts, we all have feelings, and we all have different things that impact our lives on a day-to-day basis that are a part of our identity. And we need to understand what each other are going through, or we'll never make educated decisions when we are at the top or making decisions for other people.
I'm just gonna just say a little words on that. What's her name? Kirsten.
Kirsten. Mm-hmm.
Man, obviously you already doing more than enough by
Mhm.
voting. Um, because like we've been talking about the numbers and the stats all night about Gen Z not voting. So you already doing enough there and encouraging people around you, regardless of their ethnicity, their creed, the color. Encouraging them to vote, having those tough conversations, the ones we can't have in this chat. The things behind closed doors, having those tough conversations as well, um, because these are things that many people been fighting for ages.
Mhm.
I think we kind of lose sight on the most effective things that Regina and Justin just spoke on, when going within and starting with yourself and then moving on to your family, your friends, and getting everybody to see that everybody's made different and things like that. So I think you already kind of doing it, and just keep doing it. Especially on the educating part, educating yourself, educating others on the
Mhm.
importance and knowing who to vote for, not just giving your vote away. And yeah, I'm gonna stop right there.
You said something that reminded me of something my dad said. So my dad was born in 1939. So he was a young man during the civil rights movement. And when I ask him questions like, "Daddy, what was it like to be there as it's happening and then it happens? Like, what was that like?" And He just said the most powerful, simple thing. He said, everybody wasn't marching. Everybody was not marching. And so I think, look at what a few people did. So you can't expect everyone to get it at the level that you get it and be engaged at the level that you're at. But that doesn't mean that what you're doing doesn't matter, because everybody's not going to march. But that does not mean that you cannot make a huge impact. Through the civil rights movement, we got the Civil Rights Act. Take that away, where are we today? I mean, it is still resonating. The ripples of that movement are still moving, and everybody wasn't marching. So for the young, uh, politically engaged people on this call, everybody's not going to march, but that does not mean that you can't be impactful and make a huge difference that will ripple throughout time. So be encouraged, get fired up. We need y'all. And
you
keep
just
going.
spoke to me. I don't know if you meant to do that. But the way that sometimes you can, and I can speak for the ones that are just engaged all the time. We
Mhm.
get bogged down by the thought process that everybody else is not coming along with us.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that you just gave me a little nugget that said, keep going because everybody's not going to come with you. That I need to let that
And of
settle.
course, he didn't say it like that. You know, my daddy's old. He's 80, 84. He's a man of few words. So he's just sitting back in his chair with his legs crossed. And he's like, everybody wasn't marching. I'm like, you preaching a word, daddy. You
Yeah,
preaching.
exactly. I appreciate that. Well, I do want to give each of you a minute to just tell us your final thoughts about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what we should take away from this conversation, what you want us to take away from this conversation the most. We'll start with whoever wants to go first because I'm really bad at that. Popcorn it, y'all.
Oh, my mic is off. Go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
How about I say, I'll go ahead. We spoke earlier about, young voters not voting, and that kind of reminded me of myself when I was, once I turned 18, because throughout I'm 34 now, and throughout my 34 years of living, I've never seen a Republican, a Democrat, or anybody do anything for Black people, especially on the economic level, because we know that Black people deserve reparations. So as far as the DEI is concerned, and as far as affirmative action and all these things has been put into place for Black people not to learn about themselves or to know who they truly are and to research and all these things, it's like what can we do to have effective change, and I think about that daily, and I hope that the listeners are listening in on the things that they could really do to bring effective change to not only Oklahoma but to the world, because we've been dealing with things like this forever. And this will, I don't know if we're in assimilation or a cycle, but, it's time for true effective change. And everyone needs to be open to that.
I was saying agreed. I'll jump in and let Justin bring it up. So I have 4 fingers here, guys. This is me. I'm not gonna say what year I was born in because, as Miss Tab says, that's my business. But this is me. This is my dad, born in 1939. This is my grandfather, born in 1899. And this is my great grandfather, born enslaved in 1847. We are not far removed from slavery and the impact that that has had on this nation, the thoughts, the mindsets. You ask any Native Oklahoman or Native American, and they could do this exact same thing. And so I say that to say it takes time. You have to be patient in this work. And there are still, my daddy's still alive. He's still alive, kicking it hard. It takes time to change minds, and some people will never, some people will never make the adjustment, right? And you have to be okay with that. You have to go after those that are willing, open, and listening. And so be encouraged in this work. It is long, it is slow, it's emotional. But the work that you are doing matters. It is impactful and it will make a difference. So just, I love you guys. I've got young people. I got a 21-year-old at OU and an 18-year-old at UCO and one coming up in high school. So I look at them and I see the future of our country, and I'm excited about what is coming, and what you all will get done. So, I mean, put me in, coach. Like, let me know how I can help, how I can help move things along. I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you.
Well, that was beautiful, and I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but no, I want to say this, and for anyone who's listening who or watching that, is in the boat of what I said I hear the most of. I'm going to leave Oklahoma, right? I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to move. Believe me, I have had that exact same thought. And sometimes I still have that exact same thought. Believe me. I mean, every day I feel like there's something that challenges my willingness to stay in this state. But there is something that keeps me in this state, and it's you all. It's everyone that's in this call. It's everyone who can't be in this call. And it's everyone who couldn't be in this call, right? It's all Oklahomans, everyone. I come from a very, very impoverished part of Oklahoma. Okay. The southeastern part of Oklahoma is is a horrible state. I just want to say, to be kind. And we have seen for the longest time how bad leadership is in Oklahoma and how much they didn't care about us. And yet people still voted for those people. And I think that that comes from a place of not being educated, right? Not being educated on the issues, not knowing what's going on, right? To all of the young people left. They get out of that town as soon as they graduate or as soon as they drop out or they get their GED, they're gone. They leave. There's a vacuum there, right? Yes, absolutely, McAllister. Yes. I think that that is a great example of why you can't leave Oklahoma. We cannot create a vacuum, right? If Gen Z is going to be the most powerful generation to have the most ability to make change, we cannot flee the state. And yes, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard before it gets better. Believe me, it is. Every day, like I said, I have these thoughts, right? And I know you do too. And especially with Christmas time, holiday season coming around the corner really quick, crazily enough, we're surrounded by family, or some of us are not surrounded by family, right? Some of us are not surrounded by anyone, and I want to say that I love you and we love you. The Democratic Party loves you, and we want to be here for you. We want to empower you. And I hope you do, after this conversation, feel at least a little more empowered to get out there and make a change, because you really do have the power to make a difference. And you should. You should make a difference, and you should want to, right? This is your home. That's why home is in Oklahoma. This is your home. This is my home. And I want to stay here. I want to raise my kids here. I want to make a change in this state. And it won't happen if everyone leaves. So please stay, educate those people around you, and vote. Please vote and get your friends to vote, get your family members to vote, and help them make educated decisions as well. Because like I said, we don't need a vacuum, because they're going to fill it, and they're not going to fill it with niceness, kindness, and generosity. They're going to fill it with hate. And we've already seen that, and we don't want that to continue.
Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel discussion this evening. I truly appreciate each of you for bringing something different to the table, and for giving us more knowledge on diversity, equity, and inclusion here in the state of Oklahoma. I'm hopeful. And I'm glad that we were able to put this conversation together. I do want to make sure that I give you some tidbits before we all leave. We have been taking action. We have not been sitting by and just waiting for somebody to do something to us on this. We have been trying to, as soon as we found out, as far as the Young Democrats of Oklahoma and the College Democrats of Oklahoma, we have been trying to take action immediately because it's necessary. I think one of the things that the governor decided to do was drop this in December and right before the holidays when nobody is really paying attention to see if he could just kind of slide this through. And we said, no, that won't happen here. And so with that, we did put out a statement about diversity, equity, and inclusion and its importance to us as the Young Democrats of Oklahoma. But also the College Democrats of Oklahoma initiated a letter writing campaign. This is where you get the opportunity to tell the governor and your elected official exactly what it is that you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I need you to do the same thing. Be a part of the action. Tell the governor and your legislators exactly how you feel about DEI and that you want them to support DEI services and programs in our state, and that dismantling them is not going to better our communities. So please, please, please take time to go and make your voice heard. You can do it through email, and there's some links that have been dropped in the comments for you to be able to find all of these things. There's even a small blurb available to you for you to see what exactly you can say and how you can start that conversation with the governor and your legislators. So please check that out. Please take action. Don't just sit by. This is one of the ways that you can actually be actively engaged in this process and making sure that there's nothing else to come from this, and that we tell the governor to rescind the executive order that he has put in place about DEI in our state, in our higher institutions of the education and in our state agencies. Also, if you would like to share this and to view this later, maybe you missed a little bit and you want to go back and see what was being talked about and discussed here in the panel, please check that out on the Oklahoma Democratic Party YouTube channel. Just click the live tab and you'll be able to find it there. As the president of Young Democrats of Oklahoma, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Oklahoma Democratic Party for being supportive of Young Democrats of Oklahoma. I appreciate all of you for everything that you have done and will do in the future. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a good night.